Over the past decade, I've created a variety of content both online and in the real world when I was trying to make it as an independent filmmaker. Throughout these years, videos have ranged from movie reviews, podcasts, music videos, live action short films, attempt at making feature films, documentary work and recently animated projects. This content wasn't always available on my own personal YouTube channel. Sometimes it was a hired gun for other creators, collaboration with friends on their own channels, so on and so forth. It wasn't until a few days ago that I realised that in all my time as a creator, I never took the opportunity to actually introduce myself to the subscribers of my own personal work. Well, at the time of creating this video, I have 922 subscribers. A pretty small fish in a huge pond, but in the age of the internet, it became regular practice for creators to engage with their audiences on a more personal level and not solely through the work that they create. Well, here I am. Don't be too disappointed now. I'm Douglas Fender and I'm an independent filmmaker from Scotland. For the past 10 years I've ran this YouTube channel and never once thought about making a video that talks about who I am, what the channel is, or what I'm hoping for it to be. If you're one of the 900 plus subscribers, thank you so much for doing that and I hope you continue watching. And if you're just stopping by, well, who knows, you might want to actually know what's going on here. The channel's taken steps in numerous different directions over the years and I just thought I'd clear the air and give you a brief retrospective about what's going on. It turns out in the modern age, audiences can connect with creators more than they can connect with the material that they're putting out, so I thought it would just make sense to tell you all a little bit about myself. I was always a filmmaker at heart. I remember making those crappy short films with friends as a kid. For me personally, we used whatever I could get my hands on, which at the time was a home CCTV camera, but the footage of all that's long gone and like many filmmakers out there, this kind of early work is, well, cringing at best. But important for you to unlock your imagination if you're wanting to be creative in the future. I never really thought it would go beyond having fun with friends, and for a good long while it never did. I decided on an education in music instead of film. Looking back, it was the wrong decision, but I met many lifelong friends along the way. It wasn't until I finished a voluntary stint in Bulgaria before I revisited the idea of filmmaking. Most of what I made were silly tests, lighting practice, random shots that I found cool, filming trees, filming family, events, you know the score, anything you could. I just wanted to play around with the camera. Where my YouTube journey truly began was when I started collaborating with my friend Ross Hepburn, who you may know as a contributor to this channel from the past, where he did podcasts and book reviews. At the time, I just wanted to record something, so I went along to his shows back when he was trying to be a stand-up comedian, and shared them on his channel. Ross was as keen to create content as I was, and though we couldn't commit to a big project, we had the idea of creating a talking head scenario where he could try out some of his favourite jokes. We decided to shoot it in the style of Woody Allen's Annie Hall, the intro where Woody Allen talks to the camera. But as time went on, these short videos were giving me the urge to create something a little bit better, to finally step into the world of fiction and make something a little bit more special. In the winter of 2012, we had the silly idea of making our own version of A Christmas Carol, and shot it over the course of a few days. Looking back, it's an amusing short film, made even more so due to the evident incompetence from a filmmaking standpoint. But for something shot in only a few days with just the two of us, we were proud of it. So much so that we decided to make it an annual thing and remake It's a Wonderful Life the next again year. Between these projects, we made numerous short films including a documentary about Ross set during the Edinburgh Fringe Festival. It's probably one of the best things I've ever made, and feedback was positive. Watching these chronologically, you'd see how much I was growing as a filmmaker. Occasionally I watch back these films and I just cringe at how bad some of the filmmaking is. We're talking simple mistakes, but it was all part of learning in this field. It was taking me back to when I was using that CCTV camera at home just to make things with friends. But I wanted to be a serious filmmaker, a proper artist. But the route to doing that also drew your friends further away. I was spending far too much time setting up lights and framing shots correctly that they were getting bored, impatient, or they just didn't really want to waste so much time doing it. It wasn't fun for them anymore. I was taking it too seriously, which for me was exactly what I wanted, but for them, it kind of had the opposite effect. In 2014, I made what I believe is my longest ever project called Open Lines. It's a fairly simple story about a radio DJ who was receiving on-air calls from a serial killer throughout the night. It was originally planned to take place solely in the radio station, but again, my imagination was unlocked and I decided to venture outside so that we could see things both from the DJ's perspective and from the killer himself. Overall, it was a huge undertaking. I was in control of every element of the film. The camera work, the lighting, the sound, the editing, the set design. It was a lot of work. Despite the limitations though, I was really proud of it. Maybe too proud. After receiving positive feedback, I made the decision to just jump headfirst into my dream. I was going to make a full-length feature film. Stray Dog was a movie I'd written in 2015, and after the success of Open Lines online, it attracted others that were willing to collaborate so that I could make my dream come true. These weren't just friends anymore, these were real actors and crew. I set up a crowdfunding page which inevitably failed, and made mock trailers for the project in a similar shooting style to how I'd made Open Lines. Despite not having the funds, I still intended on making the movie, but it became pretty clear early on that I was in way over my head, and the project eventually fell apart, but you can't blame me for trying. What's left of Stray Dog is still available to view on this channel, just scroll down to the earlier videos. It was an interesting project to try, but I just couldn't pull it off. Promises were made, earnestly may I add, and I just couldn't realistically keep them. I just didn't know that at the time. I still consider the venture to be my greatest failure, which is a sour note to go out on in filmmaking. The next few years would see a big decline in productivity. I had a newborn child and was struggling to find a creative voice. I decided to go simple and record movie reviews that I'd recently watched. They're some of the most popular videos on the channel, but especially with a newborn child, I didn't find it easy to maintain a regular upload schedule, and eventually content stopped being created. Dare I say, I fell into a creative roadblock. I was still suffering from the failure of Stray Dog, which hit me quite hard, and I felt anxious about dipping my toe back into the world of filmmaking. At the request of many friends, I gave filmmaking a try once more, but this time sticking to the short film format. In 2016, I made Dying to Forgive, also available on this channel, which was shot in a few days with some of the people I'd met during my Stray Dog venture. It was a 20-minute drama about a man who was dealing with the expected death of his dying wife, who he'd been unfaithful to throughout the marriage. He's consumed by guilt and feels the only way he'll ever be able to live with himself is to confess, but since that's no longer an option, he decides to euthanize his wife and be arrested for murder as punishment for being such a shitty husband. It was a pretty heavy story, and unlike anything I'd made before. The film eventually got nominated for numerous awards, even picking up an audience prize in an independent festival in the UK. Since its release, I was pretty satisfied with how it went. I never intended on going any further. I was happy to go out on a positive note instead of on a sour note, like with Stray Dog. But you know how it is. Once a filmmaker, always a filmmaker. It wasn't long until I started getting the itch and I had to get back to creating again. The channel continued to occasionally create late night reviews, podcasts, fan edits and musical compositions. This is when I started working with Ross again. We tried our hand on a sort of multi-content kind of channel. I'd do movie reviews, Ross would do book reviews and a podcast show with our friend Louis Harper, and then we hoped occasionally a bigger project might reach the surface. It was a nice idea, but once again interest and availability for each project to be regularly maintained just wasn't possible and the idea eventually fell apart. As sad as that was, there was actually a silver lining there. I'd suffered another setback and I wasn't going to get thrown off by it. This wasn't like Stray Dog, there was not going to be a hiatus here. I was still going to take full control of the channel and just go full throttle towards what I wanted to do. The other content that Ross and Louis made, they're still going to remain up there, but if you're at this channel for that kind of content, book reviews or podcasts, then I'm just going to be honest, that stuff's not going to continue coming out. The channel's taken a different direction. I just thought it would be disrespectful to remove it just because I had different ideas in mind. 2020 hit and there was this little thing called COVID-19. You might have heard of it. It put the world to a halt and it affected millions of people worldwide. I don't want to talk about the specifics of it, I just want to talk about the sort of almost positive repercussion of COVID-19 for myself, as selfish as that might sound. With the ability to leave the house no longer possible, I decided to take my career in a different direction. The idea was simple. I was going to learn stop motion animation and do my best to keep everyone entertained during the tough times of being stuck indoors. It was a huge learning curve. I wasn't happy enough just learning the basics for several years, I wanted to jump straight on in and make short films. The Company of Terror's anthology series was to be 6 short stories all set in different single location sets. All 6 episodes of the show are written. The first episode, Tucked In, was written by Ross Hepburn and animated by myself during the summer of 2020. It was a great idea not only to remain creative, but to allow other actors to continue taking part in projects when they couldn't leave the house. Just record the voices while taking directions over Zoom or Skype, send it over, and I'll edit it in. After Tucked In was released, I was so enthusiastic and happy about the positive feedback that I just jumped straight into making the next one. Elevator is the second episode of the Company of Terror series. The production upgrade is huge. Slicker animation, better voice acting, better cinematography and sound, and the thing's half an hour long, whereas Tucked In had only been a couple of minutes. The reason for the upgrade is not only because I'd grown as an animator over those few months, but the damn thing's taken me until right now at the time of this video to create. That's nearly 2 long years stuck in the same room with the same project. If you're wondering how the project took so long, it's quite simple. I still want to have experiences elsewhere. A flourishing relationship, a great kid, a wonderful home and a full-time job which is very demanding. It's all a very stable existence, and I can see what happens when you ignore all that and dive too deep into a project for the sake of getting it done faster. That's what I found so amazing about stop motion animation. For me, it exists in the attic. Here it is here. This is my setup. It takes very limited space and I'm working with very basic equipment, though I do hope to grow it even bigger in the future. I don't have to plan around the time of others, and it's always up there ready to go when I have a spare block of hours throughout the week. As much as it's an easier schedule to keep, it gives you a much better create-life balance, it does mean that the projects take a lot of time to finish. I don't want people thinking that the channel's dead just because I'm not regularly uploading. Couldn't be further from the truth. I am working tirelessly in my free time to get as much content out as possible. It just so happens to be that the one I've currently been working on took a rather long time. So thank you very much for listening to this, what I'm calling a brief retrospective of the Company of Terror's channel. It's went through several different names such as my own name of Douglas Fender, and when we were doing the multi-content stuff I believe it was called Talk to the Hand, but I've decided it's going to remain as Company of Terrors. If you're one of the subscribers watching this, thank you so much for being a part of the channel. If you're new here and you haven't subscribed, maybe you should consider it, but if not, that's okay. I wouldn't want you subscribing unless it was actually a channel that you were interested in. The kind of fake numbers aren't really useful to me, not useful to the channel, and they're not useful to you. Hope you're looking forward to the next project because Elevator is coming soon.